Alright folks, I've had a couple of days to think about Godzilla, and like I said, I was kind of like, I didn't know really what I was thinking about it. Made up my mind, and we need to bring out this guy. Yep, I just did not enjoy this movie. Not a whole lot. I kind of have to say, it's one of those films, it's different from like Man of Steel, where that movie just, I was so disappointed in it because the hankering of a good film was there. I sensed from what the script could have been instead of what it was, and as far as the ideas that David S. Goyer kind of had, but didn't really have in the way that Zack Snyder, probably it was, and the directors who you have to ultimately have to say, okay, the director's in charge of everything on set, and that includes the script. So the way that Zack Snyder just probably butchered that script into a more, forget that, we need the visual style stuff, just left me thinking, well, I guess that's the most important thing in this new Superman is the visual stuff, and I just didn't like that idea at all. Godzilla is a different case. Godzilla is different. I was like, up until about an hour and 15 minutes into the movie, that's when I kind of laid the line down and I said, yep, I just don't care anymore. I just stopped caring about the human characters. I stopped caring about what Godzilla was doing, what the bad guys are doing. I don't know. I'm not going to spoil it for you. Still, I'm not going to say if Godzilla is the bad guy, because from the trailers and stuff, you see, the idea that Godzilla maybe is not the only monster in the movie. I won't tell you if he is or not. But the way, I didn't care what happened to Godzilla at the end. I didn't care what happened to the cities and stuff and to the military. I just did not care. About an hour, 15 minutes in the movie, I'm like, well, it's just nothing is clicking for me in the human story at all. I just, and like I said, Godzilla movies and movies like this, just don't appeal to my nature as well. So maybe that's a part of it. But even still, there were some moments with Godzilla, especially in the last 25 minutes or so, that I wanted to cheer because what he was doing was awesome. That probably gives you the good clue, of what the answer is to whether or not Godzilla is the only monster in the film, the way he fights. And stuff, and I enjoyed that, and I said and then that's what made me think about it, because I was like, the setup to the picture's pretty good, and and stuff, and then we're left with like an hour and a half otherwise of just bland characters, forgettable characters, unappealing acting, pretty much non-acting, so. And I said, it just doesn't balance out, and it's too little too late when we get these cool moments, and you see what the film could have been, but at the same time, probably better off that it wasn't. Because if you do get 2 hours of Godzilla doing what he does in the last 25 minutes, eventually it's going to get to the point where you're just, it's unrecognizable, and it just feels like a wrestling match. Basically the story is that Godzilla is like a creature. It's kind of hard to explain, but basically we start with Ken Watanabe's character and Sally Hawkins' characters, two doctors, and they're just making this discovery and stuff, and just this idea that there's like giant creatures out here that feed on radiation. And eventually, one of those creatures gets basically hides out in this place for several years, and then crap hits the fan, and now it's up to the military and stuff to figure out what they can do. And Godzilla kind of, is this creature where it's like, is he friend or foe? Is he the destructor of us all, or is he going to help us? From this other radiation monster. Okay, fine, I gave it away. Whatever. The previews, you get the great idea. There's more than one monster out there. Whatever. I go back on my... I don't care. At this point, about this movie especially, even still, this, I don't maybe feel... Maybe this... It's just unnecessary. I don't know. because I usually say we're going to cut up this bad movie. Here, it's like, if I cut into it, it doesn't matter, because it's not, there's just, I don't know. It's just one of those cases, So the setup of the pictures, that's all right, and the Bryan Cranston character, he's like this kind of, he's another scientist character, kind of like the other two, and he's like, we see him in the previews. You're hiding something, this is gonna send us back to the Stone Age. He's going all Bryan Cranston-y, Argo style, and that, that's interesting, and that character was I was like, well, not just because he is Bryan Cranston, because even though I don't watch Breaking Bad, I'm kind of, in that wheelhouse of, this guy is an appealing actor, and whatever he does, I'll probably find the character at least appealing in several ways. And then something happens, and then his character just ends up being totally unimportant, and just totally gets nothing happens with him after a while, and he's kind of left on the sidelines, and I'm trying to figure out. I'm like, really? You're gonna leave Bryan Cranston out in favor of Aaron Taylor Johnson? Seriously, I think this is the biggest weakness in the film. I just didn't care about this young guy. I guess the character's name was Ford. Ford Brody, and his dad Joe is Bryan Cranston. But I just did not care about this guy at all. He was, apart from like maybe one or two scenes, he was completely unemotional. He just went around with the same expression on his face, which is, this just happened, but but I'm safe, I'm okay, and he has that expression on his face pretty much the whole movie. It's not acting. That's basically walking. That's like sleepwalking through your part, and that's and if you're the central character, you have to have kind of some different dimensions, especially in like disaster movies like this. And you think back to movies like Airport and Poseidon Adventure and stuff like that. Godzilla kind of fits in that wheelhouse too, even though this is giant lizard monsters and stuff. Instead of natural disasters, but whatever, you have to have that central character that that's emotive a little bit. Even you think back to movies like Twister, which is another natural disaster movie. Even then, like the Bill Paxton and Holly Hunter characters are more emotive than this guy. And I was, even then, those characters, they're the stereotypes. They have the stereotypical plot line going on. And ultimately you can just snooze while they're going through their stuff and the twisters aren't on screen. Here it's the same exact case. This is like exactly it. It's like 20 years after Twister, they haven't learned anything in this genre. Even still, they have had some better disaster movies, not terrifically good ones, but like Independence Day worked for what it was. Even though that's an alien invasion movie. And even like, this is better than like 2012. Like that movie just puts you to sleep after the first hour. And even then, that first hour is not exactly perfect. But even then, there's moments in this film that really are a snooze fest. Like, we do get one scene with Aaron Taylor Johnson with his family and with Elizabeth Olsen and his son. And that scene kind of works. I was like, okay, if the whole movie's like this, that'll be good. And then it's like, he almost forgets about it, almost. I mean, he mentions his family still quite a few times, and he's getting back to his family, and trying to, in all this chaos of Godzilla and other creatures running around, and I just kind of I was like, well, good for him, but what about all these other soldiers whose story we don't see? They're trying to, they're probably trying to figure out what's, keep their families safe too, and all this stuff. I was just like, after a point, I was like, I don't care anymore, And Elizabeth Olsen's character, especially after that first scene, just could have been played with somebody, like a broomstick and a mop, just totally could have been played by anybody, and no real acting comes to that, and no real acting comes to Aaron Taylor Johnson. Especially the David Strathairn character could have been played by anybody. I think, he's another one of those cases. Sleepwalks right through his role. Ken Watanabe's character kind of seemed a little bit more interesting. Sally Hawkins' character was another case where it's like, well, that's another anybody could play. Even to some points, Bryan Cranston in a couple of his lines, just the way he delivered them, I was like, well, I can totally tell he's kind of getting like, he's probably not all that empathetic behind the scenes, something's wrong here, and that kind of gave me that sense, so that when something happens with his character, I was like, well, that doesn't surprise me. But yeah, even still, but I think the Ken Watanabe character was my favorite of the human characters, because he actually, sometimes had some emotion to him, and sometimes had some enthusiasm to certain lines. Like, he has one line that we see in a couple of the trailers where he says, "Let them fight," and even that line, I was like, that's the best delivery in the whole film, pretty much. And it's a simple little line, and I was like, that's the best emotion that we get from Deliverance and dialogue, was "let them fight." This movie's in trouble. Oh man. And yeah, outside of the way though, I have to compliment though, Godzilla, the way he looks, the way he acts, the way he does stuff, awesome, very good job. The special effects are very good here, and a few of the set pieces and stuff do really come out well, and it's like 2012, or The Day After Tomorrow is an even better example. We're sticking with Roland Emmerich films here, not the original Godzilla. But like the pieces, in Day After Tomorrow of the disaster stuff, like you cut out everything else and just put like those 2 or 3 sequences together. Like there's, let's see if I can remember that movie. They had the Twisters in L.A. and then they had like the floods in New York and stuff. Just cut those 2 scenes together and play it on loop for 2 hours, whatever. Then it's, and the same with in 2012 when they had that L.A. destruction scene. With John Cusack driving the limo around, that was actually pretty fun. And it's, even though it's a different kind of fun than you should probably be having in these movies, it's still like, it comes off as a scene like, well, that was actually kind of entertaining, even though it's implausible beyond implausible, and it doesn't hold a candle to what it should actually be, for a disaster movie. It's like a different retro vibe that you didn't feel before, and kind of, sends you for a loop there for a second. I was like, wow, this movie can actually be fun. Instead of being all this melodramatic, serious, oh my god, it's the end of the world stuff. So yeah, there's a couple of scenes kind of like that here with destruction, with Godzilla even walking around doing stuff. And yeah, those scenes are pretty well executed and very well handled, and the special effects look good, and Godzilla looks good, and like I said, his end stuff, his fight, is awesome, and it kind of makes me kind of sad to have to give this movie a bad rating, because if the whole movie had that fun sense and you actually cared about the human characters enough, don't just give them one scene, give them, like 2 or 3 scenes, and cut out, the military stuff was BS, and absolute, like those scenes, like there's like 5, maybe I'm exaggerating here, but there's like 5 scenes with Ken Watanabe's character trying to convince the David Strathairn character that something, that what his plan is, your plan will not work. Your plan will not, like, he says that line like 4 times in the movie. Like, we can do that in one scene, in one take, pretty much, because these actors are so good. And, and well, maybe not one take, but whatever. If we can do this once and call it good, and that's it, and instead they do it like 5, 6 times. I'm like, it makes the movie, even though it's only like right at 2 hours, I was like, still, this movie drags at spots, even though it is 2 hours. I don't know. It's one of those movies that, sure, it's fun, and it is kind of I do kind of recommend you to go see the movie. If you're especially like the big Godzilla, if you're a big Godzilla fan or a big action, destructive fan, like, like those Day After Tomorrow, 2012 movies. Sure, go see this, and you'll enjoy the Godzilla scenes, the fight scenes. Just any scene with Godzilla in this movie is actually very well handled. And yeah, otherwise though, the movie bores the heck out of me. The designs and stuff on Godzilla and the other creatures are good, and are what this movie, impacts, what it could have been if we cared about the characters. The whole thing would have gone through probably nicer, and if the screenplay, maybe if they touched up a little bit, some of the dialogue is really corny. I can't remember any specific examples or anything, but there's just, some lines are just like, ugh. Oh, you get that in every movie pretty much, especially with the military stuff going on. And yeah, there are certain scenes that drag on, and the one thing though that I was really disappointed in, there's one scene, or kind of maybe halfway through, where Godzilla's, first appears, like on land, like his first big appearance, and he's getting ready to fight a creature, and they cut, and they show like maybe a couple of clips of what happened, and then they move on. I was like, oh man, we needed that scene. We needed that scene to boost, even if they had that scene, it was a full-fledged fight scene, I probably would have been given this movie a recommendation much higher. I would have been given it a positive rating. It would have overcome those scenes before and after where we don't care what Aaron Taylor Johnson's doing, because we have enough interest in the movie to see what Godzilla's doing next, and to see how he's going to up the ante, because he's going to have to fight, in the end, 2 creatures, and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, we have to do this. And get encouraged by this to give this movie an even higher rating, and they don't do it, and it's too bad. It's really too bad. So yeah. So one other thing that's come up here, this is kind of non-related, but Gareth Edwards, the director of this movie, he directed one movie before this, kind of a smaller independent feature I have not seen, and now he's going to direct one of the Star Wars spin-off movies. So I want to address this quick. Oh man, this is, like I just said with the Zack Snyder situation with Man of Steel, Gareth Edwards is responsible for why this movie is the way it is. Even if he didn't write the script, he's the director. He approves everything. And he's on set, and he's supervising the script to the way where it's his vision. And if this was his vision to give us bland characters to follow around, and stuff like that, I don't know. This next Star Wars movie, and it's going to be a different movie. I hope to God it's not like some Star Wars end of the world movie, because if it's that, it's over. Lucasfilm, being acquired by Disney, if that's what they want to do with their spin-off movies, you've lost me. And I'm a die-hard Star Wars fan, so if they do that, you've lost me, and I'm not even going to come to the theater to see that. But I know they won't do that. And there's been ideas, this is going to be a Han Solo spin-off, which I'm not particularly excited about. I mean, it'd be kind of cool to see him, do the story where he meets Chewbacca, but not like he meets him, but where he, he befriends him. Like, if the movie starts with Han Solo and Chewie's already there, and he's not very good friends with him or something, if they could somehow do that, maybe. I don't know if they can do that or not. And I don't know. I've not read into the expanded universe, so I don't know if they've already told that story or what. I did hear in the expanded universe, though, that they killed Chewbacca with a moon. I probably don't want to see that on screen, though. But yeah, like a Han Solo feature could work. And then also his relationship with Lando before A New Hope. Because, evidently when in Empire Strikes Back, of course, we know, when he sees Lando, it's for the first time in a long while, and that Lando used to own the Millennium Falcon. So to see him acquire the Millennium Falcon, I'm thinking these are a couple of scenes that could really make the movie work and get me interested enough to the point where I'm like, okay, whatever else they have, whatever story they can conjure up, that can work. But but Han Solo I'm kind of shaky about. A Yoda movie I am not interested in. Mainly because they're going to have him be CGI the whole time, and it'll probably lack that majesty, and they'll probably have him sword fighting a lot. Even though, to certain degrees, the Emperor Yoda fight was kind of cool, it's still drug back to bad memories of that Dooku fight from Star Wars Episode 2. At least they didn't have him going like, yeah! He's like yelling around and stuff while he's swinging the sword. At least they didn't have that in Revenge of the Sith. If they would have had that, I just would have been like, oh man, ruin this fight, which could have been epic. And the fight, it's kind of epic, but at the same time, it's too little, too late to just overwhelm us and say that Yoda's the awesomest, lightsaber duelist ever, because he's not. But anyways, but yeah, otherwise, his younger self and stuff. I'm like, no. I mean, he's like this philosophical mentor character. I don't want to see him when he's young and he's in his prime and he's fighting around and stuff. I don't want to see that. And then there's the idea, of course, that it's a Boba Fett movie. And I think with Gareth Edwards' kind of darker tone, this is probably the best fit for him to do a Boba Fett movie. And between the three of them, it's the first one that I think of when I think of, okay, maybe that's the one I'm most interested in, is the Boba Fett movie. Because, we can kind of tell the story, even though I do not want to see it pick up where Episode 2 left off with the whole thing of, oh, Daddy, I've got your helmet. No, I do not want it to start there. Start when he's got it already. He's in because his armor and stuff kind of comes that more faded, like, green look for Boba Fett. I definitely want it to start when he's got that. Not when he's young and it's still silver and stuff from the Jango Fett days. No, I do not want that. What I want is him, even if he, just leading up to the events of Empire, where he captures Han Solo and stuff, even if we have that story where he's just a bounty hunter and he's like an anti-hero, that works. That works for me. We do have a good setup for it, though, where Boba could end up like fighting the Empire or resisting the Empire, because Vader mentions to him in the one scene in Empire Strikes Back, he says, no disintegrations, and he points directly at Boba Fett. So that kind of gives me the idea of, the Empire's hiring him, and he's accepting the job because they're paying him, but maybe he doesn't exactly love the Empire, And then you think back and you think, well, it was like, Mace Windu, who was part of the Jedi, which was part of the Republic, who eventually got the clones, Sure, maybe he still has that feeling. Even when he sees like the Stormtrooper stuff, he says, clones, they fight for the Jedi. Even though they did cross on him in Episode 3, whatever. So I think, and Gareth Edwards, I think he can work as a director if he has a better script and if he has, if we just have a better thing. So I'm kind of on board with him directing a Star Wars solo feature, but not solo feature, but a Star Wars spin-off, if you will. I'm kind of blindly optimistic about it, though, and I just the whole idea of spin-offs to begin with in this universe, I'm kind of optimistic, but just blindly optimistic. All right, I think that's enough of Godzilla. Basically, I just got bored with it. Didn't care what happened by the end of it. And if they do a sequel, I'm probably going to be, because this one, going in, I was like, the box office reception has been massive. The critics are liking it. I was like, well, maybe it's got like a hidden touch to it. I just didn't find it. Whatever the critics found, and maybe they just appealed better to Godzilla by the end, I didn't appeal to it as much. It was too little too late for me. And otherwise, though, if they do a sequel, I'm gonna be a little more hesitant towards seeing it. I'll probably just wait for the DVD release for that one. All right, so until next time, Godzilla's roar, a little muffled.